In this lesson, I want to talk about a special scenario that will pop up as you build the final mega challenge. So I want to explain it, and it covers kind of an overlap of two topics that we've already discussed: enums and the entity framework, or specifically the entity framework designer. So here's the scenario: you want to work with enums and remove magic strings from your application, but how do you tell the entity framework to work with your enums that you've defined? After all, the entity framework is really just substituting or taking SQL Server types and converting them into data types that are equivalent but in the .NET world, as we've seen so far. So how are then enum types saved into the database? How can you make all this work? Well, remember that with Entity Framework there are several different workflows, and how you would go about resolving this issue and making this all work depends on which workflow you're working in. My goal was to show you one way to do all of this stuff. So this is going to assume that you're doing this from a database first workflow. So you've already got the database in place, and now you're just going to try and create an entity data model from that existing database table structure. All right, so the one thing that I want to do, let's go ahead and set this up. I have a default.aspx page with a simple label on it. That's all, result label. And inside of that, I have the page load event, and then I've defined two public enums, one for color and one for product type. And so the intent here is to take a database, this database called FakeDex. So this is a skateboard company that creates different products, and there's a product table. Here, let's actually open that up. A product table, and the product table has the name of the product, a product ID, and then it has values from 0, 1, and 2, and there might be other different integer values that represent the different types of products and the different colors for this company's products. So how do we make that kind of mesh with what we have here defined as colors black, red, silver, and product types longboard, skateboard, helmet? Well, what I didn't tell you in the enum video was that whether you realize it or not, there is a numeric value associated with each enum that you create, and it starts by default with the value 0. Now you could change that by setting the first one equal to 1, for example, or you could just modify them all and make them, hard code them all if you'd like. But I'm going to go ahead and leave all of those off because this will work without it. So there has to be some effort inside of your company to make sure that black is always 0, red is always 1, silver is always 2 across all applications that might use that FakeDex database. And the same would be true here for this product type enum as well. So what I want to do is start off by creating a new entity data model, and then we'll walk through the process and show you where the disconnect is and how to solve that disconnect. So to begin, I'm going to right click the project name, and I'm going to add, and unfortunately off to the right hand side you can't see this, but I'm going to choose entity data model. Here, let me actually try it over here. Let's select this and then go to project, add new item, and we'll select an ADO.NET entity data model. I'm going to call this FakeDex entities and click add. And the entity data model wizard pops up. We're going to use an EF designer from a database. We'll go ahead and leave the default connection selected. I want to choose all the tables. There's only one, but we'll go ahead and just select that for ease. And it goes about creating the FakeDex entities.edmx file. So we know that what the EDMX file creates for us using several T4 templates, ultimately it'll create the FakeDex entities, which we know is the database connection, and then this product.cs. Now you can see that here's where the problem comes in. The definition for the product is of type integer for product type and integer for color, as we would expect based on how we know the entity framework's model designer, the entity framework designer behaves. But the challenge that we have is that we don't want to work with integers. We want to work with the different enums that we've established here. So let's go ahead and just start creating some code here, and we'll show you how easy it is to make this actually work. So we're going to create a new context, and then I'm going to grab all the products in the database, and then let me put everything into a string, which I'll then put into the label later on. And so we'll go for each tab var product in products, and here we're going to do result plus equal and then string dot format, and then we'll just do something really simple here, not fancy at all, where we're going to grab for each product the product's name, the product's type, product type, and then the product dot color, like so. And just so you can see this, I'm going to go ahead and put these on separate lines like that. Okay. And then that's really all we'll need to do, and then I'll just do a result label dot text equals result. Now let's see where we get just right off the bat here without doing anything special. Okay, well, we need a little paragraph in there. Hold on one quick second. One tiny detail I forgot. Okay, this should make it more readable. Okay, so you can see that we get the product name just fine, but when it comes to those, the product type and the color, we're only getting the numeric values from the database. So how do we solve this? How do we force our data model, our entity data model, to actually use the types that we've created? Well, what we can do is right-click on the given property that we want to target to use our enums, and right-click and select Convert to Enum. So the first thing I'm going to do is enter the enum type name. In this case, we're going to use the type that we created earlier, the product type, back in our default.aspx.cs file. Now, I'm pretty sure that it will ignore this when we select an existing type, like we'll do next here. We'll check the mark next to reference external type and then type in the type name product type. We probably should use the format that they suggest, the namespace dot type. So entity framework enums dot product type. Before we actually run the application, now that we've gotten stopped, take a look as we select that given property of the entity inside of the properties window. You can see that the data type is now set to be the product type. So now when we run the application, you can see that not only do we get the product name, but now we get the proper enum. Of course, it just two-stringed it because we used the string.format, and it just does that by default. But we got the product type, the longboard, the skateboard, or the helmet. However, the color still is not correct. It's still using the integers from the database. So what I want to do in this case, we could duplicate what we just did, but I want to show you that other functionality, because we could just kind of comment all that out for the color and then go back to our diagram and then right-click color and select Convert to Enum, and we'll call this color, and here we'll just start adding member names. So black, red, silver, and we could again start with the number 1 or put 20 here in the value, but it's optional. And so I'm going to go ahead and click OK to that and rerun the application now. And say yes. All right, and you can see that it used that new enum that we just defined in that dialog. So where's that saving it at? Let's go search for it here in the files that are associated with our EDMX file. You can see that it created a new color enum, and it defaulted black, red, and silver to 0, 1, and 2. If we take a look at the product definition, now you can see that it's pulling the product type from the one that we've defined in our default.aspx.cs class, this one right here, that has the full type name of entity framework enums.producttype. Where are we here? Oh yeah, here. And then the color it's pulling from the enum entity framework enums.color. So if I were to just put my mouse cursor on that and hit the F12 key on my keyboard, it would take us back to this file that was created here by the T4 templates inside of our fake deck entities EDMX file. Okay, so those two different ways to handle it. And again, this applies whenever we're working specifically with the database first workflow in the entity framework. You might go about this a little bit differently if you're using one of the different workflows. All right, so hopefully this will be helpful to you when we get to create our mega challenge here in just a little bit. All right, see you in the next video. Thanks.